For our next speaker, I'd like to introduce the CEO of Telia, Johan Dennelind. Johan has been CEO since 2013. Before that, he was in South Africa as the CEO of Vodacom South Africa. Now, this story is very compelling. I've known Johan and worked with him in our research for almost a year. Tonight at the reception, David, could you raise your hand? David Kyron, MIT Sloan Management Review Executive Editor, and Bob, could you raise your hand? Bob Eccles. Bob and I wrote an article in the MIT Sloan Management Review about this thing called the Statement of Significant Audiences and Materiality. It's just a one-page statement put out by the board saying who the significant stakeholders are for the company, the board's decision on that, and what the major ESG issues are and the kind of strategy boundaries for the company. Telia is one of 3 companies in the world that has done that. We hope eventually every company does, but that's fuel for the reception. And this is only part of the long-term value creation and transformation story that Johan is going to tell. I think you're going to find it very compelling. Ladies and gentlemen, Johan Dennelind.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to CECP and Bloomberg also for hosting and giving us and me the opportunity to speak about Telia for roughly 20 minutes or so, and then take your questions. For those of you who don't know us, which is probably quite a few, given that we're an obscure location up in the Nordic Baltics out of Stockholm, I'll give you a brief intro. And for those of you who know us quite well, there are a few of you in here, bear with me. I just want to get us on the same page. We're up there and based in Stockholm. When I came in 4 years ago, we were in 17 countries, would reach around the globe with our global carrier, which is the leading IP carrier in the world, competing with level 3 of carrying the amount of traffic, internet traffic around the world. We're about 21,000 employees in the core operations, and we have a market cap of roughly 20 billion. It went up actually 2.5% today on the back of a sale yesterday of shares in Turkcell, but we'll come back to that. As I said, we're basing ourselves in the Nordic Baltics. That's our focus. And we are a leading operator, integrated operator in these markets, 1 or 2, except for Denmark. In Denmark, we have as a little strategic challenge that we always come back to what's the solution, and I'm happy to take questions on that if you're interested. But this is really a region where things move quickly and where we're leading the way on many parameters, on the digitalization index, sustainability index, and leading the way also, I would call it, in the 4th industrial revolution, not just as societies, but companies and individuals. So when you're up there, you can feel a lot and see a lot what's actually going to happen. Stockholm is second to only Silicon Valley, I think, in terms of unicorn and startups. So it's really a place to be in this industry. For those of you that follow us regularly, we had our Q2 in July, and this is just a quick snapshot to get you into what we actually do, and then I'll get to the integrated story. We have a massive rollout of fiber and 4G across our markets, and especially in Sweden, and we are on track on an ambition we set out a couple of years back of reaching 2 million, almost 2 million households. And the beauty of this is that people actually paid about $2,000 up front to get fiber connections in the households. And it's one of the most fiberized countries in the world. And what does give us and the customers, of course, is access to the gigabit society that I'll speak about later. It's a fundamental infrastructure for society, we believe, and we're investing heavily. Norway, similarly, we're still only mobile. We have acquired a couple of companies, and right now they are the star of the group in terms of performance. Finland on the rise. We're also testing a new business model around integrated operations with media, buying content, like we see other operators do across some markets. And then I spoke a bit about our core and our divesting. We are leaving the region Eurasia, and I'll get to that in a second. And as part of that, we're also divesting our associates, Turkcell. We're down now to only 24-ish% in Turkcell. We have divested 2 times this year. We're on a very strict cash flow and cost ambition and program for the year, and we're sticking to our guidance. And we have roughly a yield around 5% on the current share price, with 2 tranches of dividends coming, one in April and one second one in October. Then we're still working on closing a sad chapter of our company, and we label it under the Uzbekistan Matters. We are back 10 years ago, Telia entered into Uzbekistan under dubious circumstances. We have been under investigation and of 3 authorities across both US, the Netherlands and Sweden. Actually 2 authorities here in the US, SEC and DOJ. Those are ongoing discussions, and we have actually put in our books $1 billion that we anticipate that we have to pay for the wrongdoings in the past. That was a big wake-up call for our new strategy that we set out 4 years ago. I will not go through this. I will just point you to 2 things that are of importance today, and I'll get to that in a second. One is obviously that we are integrating a strong governance framework and compliance program, best in class as a fundament for doing a responsible business. And we're also integrating the way we do business sustainably. And Tim mentioned that in the intro, that we also have come out with a statement of materiality as one of the very, very few and early companies to show that we take these things seriously. On the core strategy of the operations then, we're about connectivity, but we're also not just connectivity, world-class connectivity, but services on top. We're not aiming to be only a carrier of internet traffic, because then we're not 21,000, then we're 5,000 people. And customers, both consumers and enterprise, are prepared to pay for services and experience, and we can deliver that, and that's why we have an integrated converged strategy, both for consumer and enterprise. And of course, we need to be competitive across the board when it comes to efficient operations. Then we focus a lot on building a strong culture, and that comprises 2 things. One is the formal framework with sustainability and responsible business and governance and compliance. That's really the formal part of it, but the more important piece is how we as individuals and employees work and act in the company. So therefore we put a lot of emphasis on our values and our culture, and that's why it's also integrated in our 1-pager for everybody to see how important it is. We, as I said, had problems, and it started way before we came in, and actually the reason I and my chairman came in was that we had so many troubles that the old board and the CEO had to leave. And we came in and set a new framework for getting us back on track. We had a huge impact, not just on our brand, but on our people and motivation, trust from stakeholders at large. We had to start from the beginning, resetting the company's platform, and we have done so with a strong framework. We're now getting towards where we can start delivering on the potential. It's taken time. It does take time. Once you go wrong and want to do things right again, it takes time. But if you don't have patience, you don't have a business in the end. So we have been patient, and we're getting to a point now where we can start delivering on the potential. And that's also unfortunately seen in our share price over the last few years. Has not been very exciting, but we have kept a level where we think we're now at a good stage moving further. Getting to this integrated piece, when we started, it was really about getting the things right from the ethics and compliance and responsible business side, because we didn't have it, believe it or not. Back in 2013, there was no compliance officer in our company. There was no global policies for our countries, how to act. There was no whistleblower line that was of any material impact. We had to reset everything in order to really tell the story that we are actually changing. For people to believe us, we had to really do it from the start. Before we started to talk about the proactive, value-creative things that you do also when you reset an agenda. But that was the baseline for it. Then we came up with our more shared value creation story around the sustainability. And then came 2 years ago, the Sustainability Development Goals, as you know, which was perfect timing for us to start integrating the SDGs into our business, into our strategy, not and I want to emphasize that, not as a separate thing. It is not a nice thing to have or something on the side. It is part of our core business. We believe we create value by acting towards the SDGs and fulfilling the SDGs that are close to us. And by the way, our industry was the first industry to come out unified to support the SDG 1 year ago. And I'm on the board of that association, GSMA, where I push this very hard. And I'm glad that we were the first industry to lead the way supporting the SDGs. And we as a company, Telia, is taking this to our level in our way and have launched something we call Unite internally to motivate and engage all our employees to be part of this. Spending 1 day per year on the SDGs, activities with our partners, close to our core, linking it to our everyday business and our services, and then understanding that when we do that, we're actually impacting one of the 17 SDGs. Then it gets tangible, then it gets real, then it gets integrated into the way we do business. That's how we'll reach the digital impact, social digital impact, supporting the SDGs over time. And this is where this statement of materiality comes in. And there's a sentence here that I'd like you to read, but it's so small, so I have to read it for you. But you can look it up later. It says, I'll see if I can find it here. It is Telia company's firm belief, it's my firm belief, that the best way to ensuring sustainable growth and profitability is integrating sustainable, responsible business practices into all parts of the business and strategy. It's a statement, and we're reporting on it, how we're doing, how we're progressing towards this. And it's not a separate thing. It's an integrated thing into what we do in our business. And this we realized when we came out with this, that we were very early. We didn't do it to be first or second or third. We did it because it's part of our business and was a consequence of what we have built and what I showed you on the previous slides. I think there are a lot of benefits in doing this and pushing this through your companies. And this is how we view our agenda around digital impact. As you see, a completely integrated way of running this as part of our business. And this is what we have on our strategy, in our everyday, in our follow-up, in our reporting, to the boards and to our stakeholders. And we, of course, then will be questioned. Are you progressing the way you would like to towards these ambitions? And I'd rather fail on the progress than fail on the ambition. We have put out a bold ambition. So, Telia company into the future, as we now go through our refocus and leaving Eurasia, we're divesting the region, we're divesting, as I said, in Turkcell, we're moving into becoming a pure play integrator operator in the Nordic Baltics, in the most digitalized region in the world, with a global carrier backbone supporting the explosion in internet traffic. We're doing that with a lot of focus on services on top, both for consumers and enterprise. We do that with innovation at heart, otherwise we will not be able to do this. We're doing it by going with a mentality that from the telco ecosystem, where we did everything on our own, to an ecosystem where we're opening up for partners to be part of value creation for our customers and our partners. And of course, as we have been speaking about, it is truly integrated in the way we work, in the way we report, and it's a good business case. It is not something it's done on the side. We believe that that's the way to create shareholder value. So when you're up in Stockholm, still a good time of the year, not much longer though, so don't come in the dark November, come in the fall or spring or summer and we'll be happy to host you, show you around Stockholm. This is an imaginary picture. What's happening with 5G is amazing. We were first in the world with 4G in a couple of years back. We're going to be very early with 5G in Stockholm, Tallinn, Helsinki, and so forth. And what you can do with 5G as a platform is beyond imagination in many cases. You had the mobile revolution, you all realized what that did to your lives. You had the internet revolution, you all realized what that did to your life. The fourth industrial revolution, or the revolution by combining and entering into the 5G as a platform, where speeds are even faster, where latency, i.e. the time it takes to experience things, is going to go down significantly so that you get to real-time experiences. and therefore you can start to feel and experience real things. Be it virtual reality, augmented reality, or what we actually call dream reality, because it's happening now. And that's the path to what we call gigabit society. And the gigabit society with digital and sustainable is our core belief, it's our purpose, bringing the world closer. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your attention, and happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Johan. Well, Johan, before we open up to the floor, I have one question from the app. Are you getting questions, given you put out this statement of materiality, are you getting questions about material ESG issues or stakeholders from investors? And it's a two-part question. If you're not getting any, what should they be asking? And if you are getting questions, are you getting the right ones?
The answer is yes, we are getting questions around this. And just to put that in perspective, I've spent basically 30-40 minutes of that investor hour the last 4 years talking about our problems and the effects of our problems, how we got into problems, how are we getting out of problems, are you going to get in problems again, how do you deal with this? And then I said, my answer is building an infrastructure and a platform to try to avoid that. I can't guarantee it's not going to happen again, but we're really working hard to have it as a platform, integrated in our culture, and then also report on it when we move into the value creative part, the value, what you traditionally have called shared value creation, by having it more integrated. And the shift now in investors, by the way, I think all investors should be sustainable, so you shouldn't separate sustainable investors and normal investors. I think the focus on these matters are really increasing, and I think the companies that lead the way will be rewarded and benefited down the line, hopefully sooner than later.
Thank you. So now we'll open up the floor to questions, and remember, if we keep questions short, we can have more questions, and when you get a microphone, please state your name and affiliation first. So raise hands, please. Yes, down here, Hans.
Yes, Hans Hurt from Hermes. Thank you for the great presentation. It was good to hear something about the SDGs. We haven't heard about much today, and generally here in the US you hear less about the SDGs and also materiality statement. How do you manage in practice when you have conflicts between the stakeholders? I mean, you had the list of your key stakeholders, and maybe related to that question, I mean, is there something about directors' duties in Sweden that makes it easier than perhaps here in the US to take stakeholder interests into account? There was an interesting piece in the Harvard Business Review earlier this year suggesting that one problem here is that directors' duties are interpreted in a way that you only need to focus on your shareholders. And is there a difference in Europe on this?
Thanks for a very good question. And then I go back to the first sentence on this, which you also can't read. There it states clearly that the board of directors is there under the Companies Act in Sweden to protect and drive shareholder value, right? Create value for shareholders, the main purpose. My point and our point and my board's point is that you can't do that without taking the full view and integrating the sustainability agenda. And that's the firm belief then that comes as the second sentence, firm belief that it is value creative. So I think that answers the question that you can't ignore it, and therefore you can't fulfill your overall purpose by the Companies Act if you don't take it seriously, and that's our firm belief.
Thank you. Another question? Yes, Sanford.
Hi, Sanford Lewis, Shareholder Rights Project. I'm very excited to see that you've done the statement of materiality and audiences, and I know in its original conception by Bob, there was a lot of talk, Bob and Tim, there was a lot of talk about time frames being part of the framework, and I'm wondering, I just looked at the statement, it seems like I wonder if you considered that and then didn't do it, or how you dealt with the issue of material timeframes.
Thank you very much. It's also a very important question. I think I wish we could be even bolder and more ambitious, and I think we will be, and put ourselves stronger commitments out there. This is a start. But I think as we move down to next year's integrated or combined as we have today, we have a combined report, not as separate, but combined sustainability and annual. We're moving towards integrated with this materiality statement. I think we'll also be more inclined to take bets on timing and commit ourselves to certain timeframes. For me, I mean, the timeframe is set by UN, by all countries in the world. 2030 is the deadline where we have to achieve the SDGs. So that's kind of one deadline down the road. But of course, you need to break it down and put yourself in commitments along the way. So I'll take that with me, actually, as an encouragement to be more clear on timing. Thank you.
Thank you. Another question from the floor. Bob.
So thanks for everything. Quick question. Do you notice in your investor meetings any differences between European and U.S. investors in questions? And any differences between asset managers and then asset owners that aren't using third-party asset managers?
Use this one. Repeat yourself.
So differences in questions between U.S. and European investors in your investor meetings, and any differences in questions between asset managers and asset owners who are managing their own money and not using third-party asset managers?
It's a
Oh, and I'll be there in November, so we can get together. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of Stockholm.
Happy to host you. I think there is no major on this materiality statement. I don't think I feel a difference. I think there is a difference in the compliance field and the governance. The formal part of it has been a slight difference between the regions, especially when we're going the main troubles. You get in with the big funds who have a lot of compliance themselves, and then you meet compliance, and that has been heavy weight on the heavy funds. But I don't sense a geographical divide on this sustainability side, to be honest. But I'll think about it for the next time we meet. I'll see if there is something that pops up. Do you see it? Do you see a difference in?
I mean, at a high level of generality, I think that the European investors are more sophisticated and more cognizant of this, a little bit more advanced in terms of ESG integration, maybe a little bit longer in time frame. That wouldn't be true when you look at the asset owners as much. And I think a big trend in the US is what's happening with the passive investors that are kind of in there for the long term no matter what. We have someone from Vanguard here. So it's an interesting trend here to see with the big, really big US asset managers getting increasingly engaged with engagement and stewardship.
Yeah.
Is kind of what the trend is. With,
Okay.
with Asian investors, just don't know.
All right. Thank you.
One more question before we break for lunch. Yes, please, right over here.
Hi, Allison Omans, Just Capital. I was wondering if you thought that through the sort of rock bottom experience that you had at the company a couple of years ago, did that allow for the kind of action that you took, or did we need that level of incentive to take the kinds of steps you've taken?
Unfortunately, the answer is yes, and it has been a painful and costly experience, and we can't put a price tag on it, even if we have reserved $1 billion in our book for the potential settlements. You can't put a price tag on the damage on the brand, reputation, people motivation, customer impact. You can't put a price tag on it. So the wake-up call has been expensive, and we would not have had the energy and drive and focus and priority from the board and downwards if it hadn't happened, unfortunately. So I hope I can be the wake-up call for other companies to take this seriously as you build your company that needs to be sustainable in the long run.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's have a round of applause for Johan Dennelind, CEO of Telia.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.